Having a tent the size of a house is one thing, as far as like having conversations and sitting around talking. The only tent I've slept in 25 years, though, have been backpacking tents.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, a 3-person backpacking tent will comfortably fit a normal-sized man,
Yeah. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Trail Connection Podcast. So this week we're going to be talking a little bit about hammocks versus tents. And so this morning I got a couple guys that I've known for a while, and they're good buddies of mine I wanted to bring on the show. So over here I got Cale Andrews, who I've literally known my whole life. He's a family friend, goes back a long time with us, and always had plenty of cool stories and cool experiences growing up, and shared some of that with him. So thought he'd be a great person to bring on the show. And over here I got Matt Johnson, who I've also known for a good number of years. He taught me speech in middle school when I was doing some extracurricular stuff, and is a professor at Florida College, and teaches a lot of different vocal classes there on speaking. And both these guys have some background in debate, so I thought this would be a really great opportunity to bring them on the show and hash it out. So having said that, welcome guys. I appreciate you taking the time to come out and talk today.
Good to be here, man.
And so Cale, you want to take a minute and introduce yourself?
I'm Cale, as Tim said, and been enjoying the podcast because I love basically everything outdoors. I've spent the last 34 Thanksgivings in the woods consecutively. Ill or not ill, I quit 2 jobs 2 different times so that I didn't have to work Thanksgiving weekend and could be camping out there. And now my 4-year-old son has spent his first 5 Thanksgivings in the woods. And then, of course, love hiking as much as possible, whether it's, around here in Florida or, of course, if I can get up north or out west, absolutely love it. Love the national parks. And whenever my wife and I travel for work, which we do quite a bit, we're always looking on the maps to see which state parks are nearby, which national parks are nearby. So as soon as we wrap up, we can escape and, get to Zion or get to Sedona or get, somewhere wild. So love it. And I'm passionate about hammocks. So if you're solo camping, I'll just go ahead and just jump right in. If you're solo camping, you should be using a hammock.
Prepare your rebuttal.
Of course, if you've got your whole family with you, and you've got little ones, you're not going to throw them in a hammock, and you're certainly not going to sleep with them in your hammock. But if you're solo camping, hammocks are where it's at. And since I started camping with a hammock about 8 years ago, I have never solo slept in a tent. So we'll talk more about that later.
Start setting the ground
go.
now, establishing your field.
That's right. And when you're solo camping, nothing is better than a hammock.
Okay. Well, my name's Matt, and I haven't spent the last 27 years camping over Thanksgiving. But growing up, my family did mostly spend Thanksgivings out in the woods. We went hunting every Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving for us was never a turkey. It was always deer liver, the first kill. You eat the liver and the heart, and that was organ meat for the win.
That's awesome.
But my family and I love family camping, and some of my fondest family memories, both with my family growing up and with my family now, have been in tents. And so about 4 summers ago, we started a project up in West Virginia on some family lands, been in the family for a couple hundred years. My great-great-great-great-grandparents are buried there. And we decided, because my parents are up there 5 or 6 months of the year, to build a timber frame cabin using lumber milled off of the property. So everything starts there as a tree, makes it into the cabin, and we set up camp in a big family tent for 6 weeks.
Wow.
Camped on the ground for 6 weeks as we were starting off to build this cabin. And at the end of that summer, just had a roof and had to tarp up the sides and get back to it the following summer. But we celebrated our first night in the cabin, the last night that we were there, but it's basically just a glorified wooden tent. And so I'm here to support tent camping because it promotes fellowship and gives you a lot more flexibility than just a hammock.
I love it. And I'm playing the neutral party today. So
Switzerland.
Switzerland.
So I've done a little bit of both recently. Slept in my hammock last night, actually, for half the night, and then one of my kids woke me up, and I had to get in the tent with them. So I'm literally split the fence here today. But yeah, depending on the situation, solo camping, I lean more towards the hammock, especially down here in Florida with a lot of soggy ground and stuff. But I don't know. I took my tent on this last trip on the Appalachian Trail, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. So I'm really hoping you guys can convince me today which one I should do preferably. So. So since Cale kind of kicked off a little bit with his intro, why don't you give him a little rebuttal there on what you think about tents?
Well, I as I said in my brief rebuttal, I think that tents give you a lot more flexibility than a hammock. I like to take a hammock with me on a camping trip, hang it up between the trees. It's a nice place to go and relax in the sunshine and sway a little bit in the breeze. But for sleeping, I like a nice flat surface. I end up with a lot of. You ever find that you have back issues from hanging in the hammock and sway back?
Even sway back.
There's nothing worse than waking up in the morning and taking a half an hour to stand up straight from a hammock sway back.
As a guy that does have a sore back and
Here.
beat up knees and
Post 40.
Let me tell you, you do post 40.
That's me.
Okay.
I'm speaking for me.
Point of order. Not post 40
Oh, you're
yet.
getting there, pal.
No,
you're gonna love tents more and more as the years go on.
I've actually found, as a person that does, I've done a lot of adventuring. I tell people when you do cool things, you end up hurt.
Oh yeah.
All the time. So, as someone that has ran a lot of miles, rode a lot of miles, swam a lot of miles, etc. I do have some back issues, but I find the hammocks now aren't kind of what we thought of as hammocks 20 years ago, where it's just a sheet tied to two trees, and I started actually sleeping in just a normal hammock, kind of the parachute material that was super light, tied it up between two trees, and you're limited in Florida to how long you can do that. I mean, you can only do that when it's very cold. Yeah. Then you're also having to put a piece of rope on top of that and individually rig a tarp over you. Because even if it's not raining, you're going to get dew in the morning.
Yep.
And so I was looking to upgrade after I had probably spent 10 nights like that. It's one thing if you're driving out somewhere.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be walking with a full tarp and multiple ropes and tents and everything like that. So I actually got an asymmetrical hammock made by Hennessy. So it's the Hennessy Asim is what it's called. And it's got the bug net built into it. So it's got the hammock on the bottom, bug net on the top, and then an ultralight rain fly that goes on top of it. And with it being asymmetrical, you can sleep on your back, you can sleep on your side. It actually has tie points off the bottom, so not only are you anchored to the tree, but you can tie diagonally, and actually sleep pretty comfortably if you sleep on your side.
Yeah.
Because I can take a nap on my back, but when you need a good night's sleep, it's good to be able to be on your back, roll over, etc. And I've just found that for me, I have less soreness sleeping in my hammock than sleeping, on my thermarest on the ground, personally.
Yeah.
And I just find they're really comfortable. And especially if you've been hiking and then you throw up your hammock and while everyone's still hanging out in camp, you can leave the leave the rain fly up, and you can be chilling in your hammock, reading or whatever you brought with you, and still participating with everyone that's in camp.
Right.
And then you throw that rain fly down, and you've got your mobile mini suite. You know, I mean, you're in your own world after that, and but it keeps the bugs off of you in Florida. And then of course the dew as well, so which is helpful.
Yeah, so I found the same thing. Like I've got an Everest brand, which is one I found on Amazon, and it's a double. It's got the bug net built into it, and I also have an ultralight rain fly for that too. That the feature with anchoring it to the ground would be awesome, because that's one thing that when I went on the Appalachian Trail last year with John Krim, we both did hammocks, and the last night we were there, we got just inundated with like tropical storm force winds, you know. So I woke up to my rain fly slapping me and rocking in between the trees, scared for my life that a tree was going to fall on me. But you know, if I had that extra anchor point, that'd been really cool. But yeah, I like that too, because anytime I go out to my secret spot, you know, I've got a couple groups of trees right there, and whoever I take with me, I typically have hammocks for them, and so we'll just string them up around our fire and have the fire right in the middle, and you're just chilling there, hanging out in the hammock, and you know, talking, and then when you're ready to go to bed, you just roll over. But I've got a nice thermal inflatable pad that's in mine too, so it kind of spreads out the double hammock a little bit. And I've been okay, like sleeping on my side in that, but asymmetrical sounds pretty interesting.
I'm definitely intrigued by that. I mean, these are not hammocks that I have experienced, and so I would be interested in looking into that and seeing what the comfort level would be. Of course, if you're talking about solo camping, right? That's, you know, you want to try to keep your equipment as light as possible. I found that my hiking tent, though, packs pretty easily. It doesn't take up a whole lot of space in my pack, and I'm able to carry it without a whole lot of impact. And it's pretty fast to put up. And if you're in an area that, you know, where you don't have a lot of tree cover, and you want to be able to find a nice flat spot on the ground, pretty easy to put up. And you know, maybe it is that post 40 you start to like the firmer bed better. But I find that sleeping flat on the ground, you know, with just a decent camp pad, I sleep as comfortably as I do in my nice plush bed at home. So the second issue, though, right, is what if you're camping with more than one person? So you talked about, you know, hanging out with the guys and then rolling away and creating your sort of, you know, isolated. There's something about camping, though, that should keep you up talking until, you know, the deep hours of the night. And sharing that space together, being with somebody or your family, and having the fellowship of, you know, now, don't get me wrong, you know, we don't want to have sleepovers in our bedroom with all of my kids piled in the bedroom, right? Keep that limited. Maybe the night before Christmas, you know, it's an exciting time to do that. Jessica's out of town, the kids come in, hang out in the bedroom. So, but that's pretty atypical at home. But camping is one of those special opportunities where you go and you're just with people, right? You share space, you share experience. And so there's something about the fellowship that you get from sharing that space with people, being able to talk into all hours of the night. Something wakes you up in the middle of the night, you know, and there's the mutual experience of what's that. I think you missed that with the isolated bubble of hammock camping. It separates you from people.
I don't know about you guys, but I personally, when I camp, like around the fire is where I want to be talking and have, you know. But when it's bedtime, I don't want someone asking me every time they hear 50 coyotes, you know, which you're gonna. I mean, if you're camping anywhere in America right now, it's like they gave coyotes away at the fair instead of goldfish one year. And instead of people dumping their goldfish in a pond, they just let their coyotes loose everywhere, because there are coyotes everywhere now. And so I'm, you know, a couple weekends ago, I'm listening to coyotes take something down. And I mean, it's fine to answer, you know, that's a pack of coyotes, you know, and then, but the third time they're still coyotes, you know, which I guess you only answer when you're sleeping with your kids, you know, like, what are they now? Well, now they're wolves.
Yeah, you got to pick,
know, like,
if you're camping with guys and you've got somebody waking you up every 5 minutes saying, what's that, dude? Then you've chosen the wrong camping part. But on the other hand, right? Yeah. If Chupacabra's generally out there taking you out in your hammock one by one, you need a united front, man. You don't want Chupacabra taking you out one by one in your hammock.
Prehensile thumbs, so they cannot climb, and nor can coyote. I actually feel good sometimes thinking, wow, if something runs through here, wild pigs, or for
It's not getting all of us.
Reality, yeah, it's not getting me. Like it's going for the grounders. And no, I actually do love that with a hammock, you can put a hammock 30 feet up in a tree.
Oh yeah.
If you want to, which is really cool.
Very Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, very Rivendell-esque. And one thing I have seen that's pretty cool, and
It's Lorien, Lothlorien now.
Okay,
Rivendell's
sorry.
on the ground.
Rivendell's
Come
with the
on, man.
waterfalls. I'm a disappointment to everyone. I messed up a Hobbit reference, and so
We'll talk about Harry Potter tent camping here in a minute.
exactly.
There's
Yes,
tents in
exactly.
that
If only
as
I had
well.
a tent where it was the size of a handbag, and yet, an entire 8-bedroom home could fit in it.
It felt like that in West Virginia for 6 weeks.
Oh,
We
I'm
had
sure.
the,
Did you guys have a sizable tent?
we had a massive tent,
Yeah.
and the little Cabela beds that you can stack on top of one another, cots.
Yes.
The bunk cots
Yeah.
that the kids all slept in.
Those are
Nice.
actually
Pretty
pretty
cool
cool. With the
setup.
discs on the side?
Yeah.
Is that- yeah.
And we were actually there long enough. We knew we were going to be there long enough that we had a 6-inch foam pad
Yeah.
that we put in there for Jessica.
That makes
Nice.
sense.
Great. Except for the days when we left the flaps open and massive rainstorms soaked everything, and we had to dry the pad for,
Yeah.
for 4 days.
There's something to say
For
about
4 of the
having-
6 weeks you were there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Having a tent the size of a house is one thing, as far
Yeah.
as like having conversations and sitting around
yeah.
talking. The only tent I've slept in 25 years, though, have been backpacking tents.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, a 3-person backpacking tent will comfortably fit a normal-sized man.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
Must
for
be the
us,
European
there
dimensions
are no
over there.
normal-sized men in my family. I am the largest at 5'4" and
Yeah.
135 pounds, so we're good.
Yeah. You know what I have found, too? When you are camping with a tent, you definitely need an extra tarp under it, because even if they're waterproof,
Right.
a lot of times you will get moisture up from the bottom, as
Yeah.
you said. And I had a similar experience to you when I was on the Appalachian Trail last November, and we went off the AT down the Goshen Prong. We're gonna loop back around, and it started raining about 10 o'clock at night, and it rained until about 8 o'clock the next evening.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, that's another set of problems. I will say, though, I woke up bone dry, and it rained
Really?
all night long.
Yeah.
And,
I've
I
got to
had-
get your hammock guy.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said, I need to get the name of your hammock guy.
Exactly. So, I mean, had that, the rain fly up top,
Now, did you put camp dry treatment on your hammock? This is
No.
just out of the box.
out of the box. Yeah. So, I have reapplied now, just because when
Yeah.
you've gotten it wet several times, it's good to, put more on it, either like a camp dry or Scotch Guard or dry fab or something. But I woke up dry, and my friend that I was with, my brother-in-law, actually, there was no way to keep the water out of the tent, because, if you're not on the ridge in the mountains, the water's coming downhill.
Yeah.
And when it's
Yeah.
coming, it's coming. So it actually, at some point in the night, went over his protected waterproof bottom area.
Yeah.
And, he woke up with a half inch of water that was now in his waterproof
Yeah.
tent,
Yeah.
and couldn't get out.
Not going anywhere.
So, yeah, when we, the people you meet at those shelters on the AT, if you've ever, which is another thing I like. If I'm somewhere where I can't throw my hammock, a lot of times, like on the AT, you use the shelter.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. So I got to the shelter, and there was a meteorologist of all people that was there
Nice.
that had, it looked like this, but it was just for weather, and he could tune into things that were only for meteorologists. And so we were going to spend the night there. We were soaking wet. I had just finished all my Halloween candy, and which you got to take on the trail with you. And
That's some great protein there.
oh yeah, let me tell you.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
the
it's good stuff.
Snickers minis. My friend the first night, I go, hey man, you want a Snickers? He's like, yeah, I'm trying to not eat too much candy, watch my weight, and all that. And then after we hiked in the rain for about 10 hours, he said, do you have any more of those Snickers? I'm like, yes, we can.
I'll take that king size now.
Exactly. But we got to the shelter, and I was glad we were in the shelter that night, because he said it's going to rain for the next 3 days. And
Oh,
so
wow.
at that point, we were looping back around to Klingman's Dome, and didn't have that much further to go. And
Yeah.
but I've been really happy with with the sleeping conditions of the hammock as far as keeping the bugs out,
Yeah.
staying dry. You know,
Now, what do you find is the temperature range that you can sleep in?
Preferably the cooler the better for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got that thermal pad that I use a lot, and so I've comfortably slept down in the 20s. And
Really?
Yeah, yeah, because it's got about 1.5 to 2 inches of rise on it.
And that's with your bag in the canopy.
It's the hammock with the sleeping pad, and then my sleeping bag on top of that. So when I first started using a hammock, you know, obviously if you're slinging down, all your weight's going to the lowest point. So I would always wake up with a cold butt and cold feet. But then I found that pad and put it on there, and I have not woken up with a cold backside in a long time. That does a really good job of keeping everything evenly distributed away, and it's comfortable too.
Yeah.
But they also manufacture like under hammock quilts, which I like the pad because it's real thin and inflatable, so I roll it up real tight and pack it down.
is it reflective? Does
No.
it reflect your body? Okay.
No, well, actually, you know what? It might, because it's got like this V groove technology on it, so it may do that. I don't know about the actual reflected part. I should have
I'm
read
gonna
up more
invent
on
some
it.
kind of technology and just be like, oh, it looks like a J. It's got the J hook technology to it. You know? That's what they would have called Velcro if it would have been invented by marketing guys instead of NASA.
Yeah.
The J
That's
hook
not
technology.
hook and loop.
Yeah, it's not hook and loop exactly.
But yeah, I've comfortably slept down in the 20s.
But the
with
reason
it.
I asked is, I had an experience back it was early in the spring of this year. A buddy of mine were camping up in North Georgia. You wouldn't think it would be, overwhelmingly cold, but we were in a camping area. It had a shelter on the trail. We brought a small tent with us. We also had the hammocks up, just to swing in during the day. And of course, we didn't have the fancy high tech, asymmetrical J-hook hammocks that you guys have with the V technology.
With V technology.
But the shelter, we stashed our stuff in that. I think this shelter is a sort of a last ditch effort. Of course, I say that hypocritically, knowing that I'm building a massive shelter,
Your own shelter
in West Virginia to sleep in,
Yeah.
but also
That's
camping
just
with
the
a
shed.
woman who eventually wants a toilet in this wooden tent. So that's the next phase of the construction project. But we used the shelter for storing our stuff, and I was getting cold that night. I don't know how cold it got down to, but it was pretty cold.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm going to the tent, dude. You can sleep in the hammock if you want. He said, oh, no, it's fine. And he had a pad under him, had his bag, and sure enough, I told him, I predicted. I said, come about 2, 3 in the morning, you're going to be really regretting this decision. And sure enough, about 3 o'clock in the morning, right? I hear this. He's like, oh man, I'm dying. He's like, can we share blankets? I need some body heat. I was like, well, yeah, we'll give you a little bit. We're not spooning all night, pal. And so he warmed up a little bit. And as unfortunate as it was to be woken up by, it wasn't, are there coyotes?
Yeah.
It was,
I'm
dude,
cold,
I'm freezing
hold me.
my toes off. Yeah, I'm cold, hold
Which is
me.
even worse.
I'll never let you go, Jay.
And we ended up just chatting again for another hour in the middle of the night. It was again, it sort of speaks to the it's these sort of moments of fellowship that are maybe unintended, but
Shared
still
crisis.
Shared crisis,
There you go.
right?
Yeah.
And I guess my qualification to that is, if it had not been for how ratty his hammock experience was, we wouldn't have had that extra hour of conversation. So we have
aren't you
hammocks to
glad
thank for the fellowship.
Hammocks brought us together.
Hammocks brought us together
I
because they're so bad.
I will say, like everything, you have to plan accordingly.
Yeah.
And so if it is going to be colder, having a pad under you is really helpful. You don't have the insulation of the ground like you do with a tent. But honestly, for most of my camping, especially in Florida, having it feel a little cooler actually just extends my camping season. So the fact that, okay, if it's January and there's a polar vortex and the city of Chicago closes, because it's too cold and people are freezing to death in the streets. That's like perfect camping weather in Florida.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, there's no bugs this time. That's great,
Yeah.
But once you start to get to March, April, it can be pretty rough to camp in a tent. But especially if you can throw the rain fly off and you've got a nice breeze, and the fact that you can put your hammock, higher up in a tree to catch more wind, you're just going to get actually a better, I feel, sleeping experience because you got a nice breeze and it's actually cooler.
Yeah.
When you are camping in the cold, though, I mean, if you're going to be in Tennessee in November, December, what I do is take one of those hand warmers and throw that in the bottom of my bag just to keep my feet warm, because that's the only thing that I've woken up and been like, man, my feet are cold, you know?
Yeah.
But it's about planning for that. But I've never woke up where I was like shivering because it was way too cold. It's just, as Tim mentioned, if your feet are elevated, number one, that's going to make them cold. And then also, you know, just that's what gets cold first usually, you know? So, but to me, I've never had a thing where I was too cold, but I have really enjoyed when everyone else is kind of like steaming in their tent. It's like those cook in the microwave bags of steamed vegetables where you just throw it in the microwave and it expands. That's tent camping in June in Florida. You know, you just feel like you're in that bird's eye steam in the microwave bag.
I've had that experience as well. We had a scenario where a really good friend of mine was moving away in September, and so we wanted to go one last camping trip in August. So we canoed up the Withlacoochee, found an island, and set up on the little island. And this, of course, was years ago, before I think hammock camping had really become popular. And they still were just sort of the best you could get was a parachute hammock, if that. Yeah. Even those weren't popular. Yeah. And so this buddy of mine and I and my son Titus went out camping. This was when Titus was still just a little twerp. Right. This is back in 2005, so he must have been probably 6 years old, something like that. 2005, 6, and and it was miserably hot and miserably humid. And I can remember we were cooking out on the fire, and it was so damp and so sweltering that just getting near the fire was a miserable experience. And I remember this was the worst part of the trip. It was so hot, we all had shirts off. I hung it on a tree, and it had gotten in poisoned something. Oh. It got, put my shirt back on, because it had turned inside out. I put it back on, and the next day and a half, it's streaks of allergic reactions, and had to get the cortisone.
See, that wouldn't have happened in a hammock.
Exactly. No? Well, I'm countering because it was miserable. I remember waking up at 2:00 in the morning. It was so hot, and here's fellowship is one thing, but there's only so much you can take off when you're camping with other people. Yeah. So Titus is laying there in his tighty whities. It's covered in sweat. There's a puddle on the floor from how much he's sweating. And he wakes up at 2 a.m. and shakes me and says, "Dad, can we go home now?" I said, "Son, we're not canoeing back down the river at 3:00 in the morning. We're here."
And that's how you get your kids to love camping.
Yeah.
Right. Put that tip in your. Yeah.
I think that would have been a great moment for a hammock.
It would.
Yeah. It would have been a great moment.
It would have been a great moment. We'll have to see sometime. We should do an August podcast where you sleep in your tent and I sleep in my hammock, and
in a field.
And then we have
as we say in competitive debate. Point granted.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, the just having that, and one of the things I've seen that's pretty cool, like you mentioned, fellowship and hanging out. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but there's some pretty cool pictures of multiple hammock campers that have found like 2 tall pine trees, and they'll stack them up 7 or 8 hammocks up and kind of make their. I mean, it's like an Ewok village. I have seen some interesting asymmetrical hammocks as well, where they've got them hung high up in the trees in a circle. Yeah. And they're pretty even suspended from one another. So they'll have the ends of the triangles connected right in a circle and then tied out to other trees. And of course, you'd have to find the right scenario where you could put that setup together. But that. Yeah. That's a kind of a circle of fellowship that I can get.
And I've seen them too, where they got like groups of 3 trees.
You're winning me over.
That's all
about.
What
I do.
That's how debate works.
I taught you well.
Yeah, Matt was one of my professors as well. So
yeah. So you mentioned bugs a couple minutes ago, and so the last time that I camped with my tent in my spot out here in the swamp, there was I didn't realize it until I was going to bed, but there are all these spiders that just cover the ground out here. And when I was going to get in my tent, it was like they were just covered all on the rain fly or whatever. And so I had to flip them off to get in, and it was a mad dash to dive in and then zip it back up before it got covered. I don't think they were poisonous at all, but just the fact that I'm laying here with spiders crawling over, maybe I'm not that much of a man. Like I don't really
That
want.
bothers me.
I don't really want to be covered in spiders all night. But with the hammock aspect, I sleep very comfortably out there because anybody who is out there now with me that's on a tent, I'm like, oh yeah, you're in the spider pit down there. I'm up here. But then the other thing that I was going to mention too about the tent piece of it was this past time we went on the Appalachian Trail. We kind of had that monsoon that came up in the middle of the night kind of deal where Brad and I both had tents, and I was kind of on the lower section of the hill, and I passed out pretty hard that first night, so I didn't have like my actual rain fly zipped up. I had one corner of it down. It's kind of like a teardrop shape, and I had one corner of it pinned down, the other one was open, and I woke up to rain hitting me in the face, and it was like blowing in the door and all in that lining. I got like the 2-inch lip around the bottom of the tent. So yeah, there was a section of my tent that started to accumulate some water. So then that wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but I don't know, man. It's kind of, I keep going back and forth about the scenario.
Yeah.
I do think that in large part, the way you set the grounds for a debate determines what we're talking about. So Cale tried to seed the conversation right at the beginning with solo camping. But one of that 6 weeks experience with my family, even with having to dry out on 2 different occasions for a couple of afternoons, all of our gear, and getting, we never really did get that 6-inch pad completely dried out. And we got some mildew on the bottom of it by the end, but we ended up throwing that thing away at the end of the 6 weeks anyway. Yeah. But there's nothing for me that has ever compared to that family camping experience. Yeah. Having the kids there at night in their little bunks, reading to them, the light of the lantern in the evening, and telling stories and planning for the next day. And we even had in that tent, there's multi-room tents, so you separate off, keep the kids over there at night.
That's cool. And
it's just a great experience. 6 weeks in a tent together with your family and sharing that space and sharing the story time and the late, and listening to the sounds, even of the coyotes. My kids did ask in the middle of the night, Daddy, what's that? It's a coyote. They were excited about it.
They gave them away at the fair up in West Virginia too. There's coyotes everywhere.
No, it's a regular dish. It's a fair food.
I would say
deep fried coyote.
We don't eat coyotes in West Virginia, but we do eat groundhogs.
Wow. Okay.
We do eat groundhogs. That's a delicacy.
Huh. I try it. I've had. I think coyote would be like eating raccoon.
Yeah.
Personally, I have not. Bear is one thing, especially if you get a bear that was eating plants.
Right.
If you get a bear that was in somebody's neighborhood, like the bear that
trash.
was, it's the same with a pig. You can get a big difference based on what it was eating. Well, I will say one drawback of the hammock is that to use it correctly, you need trees.
Right. Yep.
And so, depending on where you're going, there are parts of the Grand Canyon where you couldn't do it, or
the Badlands.
Yeah, the Badlands. Some places like Sedona.
Yeah.
Lots of places in Glacier.
Yeah, you need to plan your camping location around making sure you have some trees. You know, a lot of places do have them because you have the lines where you can. Hang your bags up to keep it away from bears and stuff. But you wouldn't want to get out there planning to sleep in a hammock and realize, wow, I'm just going to be sleeping on a rock instead. So.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that just from an adventurer standpoint, like, be ready for anything. There's been times where that first trip I mentioned on a previous episode that we were hiking up a certain section of the Appalachian Trail, and we came to Chihuahua Bald, which is it's a meadow on top of a mountaintop, and it's beautiful. It's probably one of the only vistas on that section that we did. But we got up there and I was like, dude, let's stay here. And you look around, there's not a single tree, like nothing close by that's not like right on the trail. So that would have been a perfect opportunity to pop down right there, but all we had was hammocks. And so the versatility of a tent, of being able to literally put it down anywhere. is pretty cool. But
Yeah, a buddy of mine and I, many years ago, this is right out of college, graduate school, we took a long road trip out and hit a lot of the different parks and areas out west. Went to Yellowstone, Glacier, the Badlands, the Black Hills, and one of my favorite photos that I have is a tent that we set up on this rock outcropping in the Black Hills. Not a tree in sight, but great picture of the sunrise with that tent there on that rock outcropping. And it's not a place you could have camped with and if you talk about Florida camping as well, beach camping.
Yeah.
Right? You don't really have an option for hammock camping if you're on the beach in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And beach camping is one of the really great things about Florida camping.
I'm gonna have to bring you back on. We're gonna do a beach camping show later
fantastic.
on, and then in the season here. So we're gonna go down to Caye Costa.
Nice. Very nice.
You ever been down there?
I have not.
I'm looking forward to that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that to go to your beach camping point because I know like the Dry Tortugas. It's really the only. I guess Everglades is also a national park, but we don't have a lot of national parks in Florida. We have some amazing state parks, county parks.
Yeah.
But in the Everglades, again, I think I'd prefer a hammock in the Everglades to a tent, because if you sleep in a tent, in most of the campsites there, you're sleeping on a wooden dock platform kind of thing, basically, that you got to on a canoe. So I'd love to have a hammock down there, but say like Dry Tortugas, there's not a ton of places to hook up a hammock because it's
Payne's Prairie.
a bunch of
Really
Payne's Prairie
great place to go.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry so much about the giant snakes like you do in the Everglades.
True. Although
Wild horses and buffalo, right?
Yeah.
Cale doesn't mind snakes.
Probably not going to
I
trample
don't-
you if you place your tent in
you
the
know
right
what?
place.
I'd take my chance. Horses are pretty uppity. I mean, I'll take my chance with it. I can go after some snakes, but no, I'll camp anywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping that when a snake and a crocodile get in a massive battle, I'm hanging up in a tree and not down on the ground with it.
So I'll throw this little caveat into the discussion. It's about the noise at night. So you mentioned you don't mind getting woken up quite a bit. I personally do. But there's the aspect of my flat pad that I have for my tent. My tent is super noisy. I mean, anytime you move, it's like you're just rattling a big ball of paper and stuff. And so, for me, like from just a volume standpoint, like I try to be as considerate as possible. You know, I'm a huge snorer. To try to not add a whole lot of extra noise to the situation when I'm with people. But I'd be self-conscious about it. If I was camping with a bunch of people and I had that pad with me, because it's just so noisy. But I mean, when you're sleeping, you don't know what kind of noises you're making anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Of course, I've got a pad that's it's one of the foam sort of self-inflatable Thermarest pads. It's not real thick, but really, really comfortable, and it doesn't tend to make any noise at all.
Okay.
And a nice cloth cover, foam inside, so it's not squeaky.
Mm-hmm.
And it packs up really, really small.
The other thing, and obviously there's a big difference between if you're car camping or hiking.
Yeah.
But to get anywhere close to a comparable weight in let's just even say a single man tent, you're talking a couple $100 more.
Yeah.
And it's still gonna weigh more.
Yeah.
Because the last tent I bought, my wife and I were hiking together, and so we bought like the lightest, Kelty. It was a Spitfire 2 or something like that, and I think it weighs like 8 or 9 pounds, which isn't bad for a 2-person tent.
Yeah.
I think my hammock weighs 2.
Yeah.
And my hammock cost hundreds of dollars less.
Yeah.
But again, you gotta you make the sacrifice based on what the situation is. You probably wouldn't backpack with 3 or 4 kids in the same tent, but for that kind of hiking where every ounce counts, you're putting salt and pepper in a film container. So I've saved film containers for it seems like a
Do they still
decade now.
make those?
Yeah,
What's a film
actually-
container?
Exactly. So
For the kids listening,
Yeah.
cameras,
Little plastic
used to. But
they've all seen Harry Potter.
You had to
They know
wind
what it
them.
looks like.
Yeah, exactly. You had to wind them.
The hand one. We had one of those with the square flash cube that you put on the top.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah,
You West Virginians.
I bought an Advantix camera. Remember Advantix?
I had one of those, yeah.
It was like 35 millimeter existed for 100 years.
Right.
And then Advantix was the next big thing. So I got an Advantix camera, and that was relevant for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then digital came out. It was like your friend that had Laserdisc. You know, it was just like it was cool though because you could do panorama and all that, and for traveling it was neat. But that was so quickly replaced by digital.
Yeah, I had probably 2 or 3 dozen Advantix rolls of film from that time.
Do you still have the containers?
I do. I have the little containers.
Okay, there you go. So I need a couple for my
this is a
season
high
off.
dollar item these days. They're a specialty item.
Put them on eBay. That's awesome.
I'll trade you for a hammock.
There you go.
I'll talk about it.
Yeah. So as far as cost goes, you mentioned pretty large differential there in the pricing. I got my entire setup for the hammock, the shelter, which the straps come with the hammock I bought, which is most cases they're separate and almost as much as the hammock itself. And then my pad. I think all of that combined, I'm looking at like $250.
Yeah.
Total for like the whole package, and I sleep better in that than I do in my bed at home.
I like the idea of the Kelty tents, but I have I use a 3-person Coleman hiking tent. I think it was probably $85.
No.
And it's a little heavier than the Kelty. I don't remember what the exact weight on it, but it's not a significantly heavy tent, and it packs up pretty small. Doesn't take a ton of room up in my pack. And then you buy if I'm going to take 3 small people, 3 of my family members, and get 3 of the thermarests and then your bags for about the same price. You're in for 3 people camping. And in one pack. Whereas if you're packing for 3 people, right, you've got to have 3 of those hammock setups, and then that price gets multiplied.
Well, if I go
so
with
again, solo camping is one thing, but there's the barrier of entry there. But you get this diminishing margin of returns if you're talking about camping with friends or family.
I can catch up with you on the quantity of people depending on which kid I take with me. So me and my wife could share my hammock, and then we could get one of the smaller ones in there.
Shared hammock.
There you go.
I see that a lot. Living close to a couple of colleges, I feel like I can't drive past any park or golf course without seeing shared hammocks.
That's what makes me
I
mad.
like the idea of a shared hammock for the first hour or 2.
Yeah.
But I don't know how it works.
They're just
with you guys,
it's a cheap date. They're not spending the night.
Yeah,
in there,
exactly.
Well,
an
that's just
hour
talking
or 2
point.
into sleeping. I need a little bit of real estate. I need to roll over and put my arms above my head. And so there's the question of, could my dear wife, happy anniversary by the way, darling,
Nice.
could she tolerate an entire night in a hammock with me without shoving me out of it?
No.
Well, I have to admit that was just a talking point. I have not spent the night in my
Give
hammock.
that a shot and tell me how that works
I will.
out.
Yeah.
I'll come back with that. But I do have to rant a little bit about, you mentioned college kids and the thing. That just, it irritates me that was a fad where they just bought them just to hang out in them like at random places, and that was super
I
cool.
see this all the time.
I know,
on
I see it all the
campus,
time.
at
I know.
Summer camps, kids just hanging out.
I mean, it's great because it's versatile and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
but
and
I'm
it gives
like,
them an opportunity to be outside instead of hanging out in their rooms, and get a taste of the outdoors, but still able to relax.
Can't take a couch out to a golf course and.
well, we did.
Kids these days. How do you use Velcro straps, or what kind of straps do you use?
The ones I have are like the I guess it's like a neoprene type, whatever the material is they use for like the ratchet straps.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like that, but it's got
nylon.
nylon. Yeah, it's got nylon, and it's sewn in loops, so you can wrap it around the tree.
Like the Enos.
Yeah, pretty much. And then as you need to get it closer or further apart, you just hook your little carabiners in the hooks, either further up or further down.
Now we do have some of the parachute type hammocks, but we didn't spring for the Enos. We went for the little bit cheaper and brought the the generic.
That's what I started with.
Yeah.
It was like
whatever it was at
Big
Walmart.
Mountain or something. You know?
And it's a real simple fastening system with a hook, but I always have to Google how to do it every time we take those hammocks out, because even though it's simple, it's not intuitive.
Yeah.
And so that probably with experience, would if I used it more, but we don't use it that often.
The one that I camp with now, it's got a parachute cord, 300-pound rating parachute cord, something like that. And I actually was trying to figure out ways without tying them, because there's different methods, and I don't have carabiners on it, it's paracord.
Okay.
And so I actually, what I've done the last couple of years, I got 2 of those, I forget what they're called, but they're just like the steel ring, and I have 2 of those on each end, and you actually double wrap the paracord around the 2 rings and then pull it back through itself.
Yeah.
So your pressure is what actually keeps it cinched in there.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't so sure about it at first. It's amazing.
It does make me nervous.
I mean,
now, see, the biggest challenge with
really,
that for me is I never got my knot tying badge in Boy Scouts.
Neither
And if
did
I've
I.
got to depend on my ability to tie a paracord safely, I'm a dead man.
Which is why I wanted to figure it out, because I figured, as bad at knot tying as I am, if I tie a knot that will hold me, I'm going to have to cut the hammock down every night I use it, And so with those C-clamps, it's really, or rings, the steel rings, it's really cool because it wraps around itself and cinches in. And I've never had it slip. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So
now, completely unrelated, since we're talking about tying knots, do you guys find yourselves like me, anytime you tie a knot in something like that, grabbing onto it, pulling it, and saying, that's not going anywhere?
Yep.
Is that a rule for men that you have to say that?
Yeah, just like if there's a hole, you have to go look in it.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You just got to do it.
Exactly.
So I want to get your feedback on how you string your hammock up, because I think that for a while now I've been letting it sling too low. Mm-hmm. So how taut do you have yours?
I pull mine as tight as I can, without it like looking
extremely uncomfortable.
Too stretched. Yeah, so I like it to be tight because I do typically sleep on my side, and so, and especially when I pull the asymmetrical side things out, it makes it a much better sleeping platform.
Yeah.
But if you pull it too tight, then you've got a ridge running through the middle.
Yeah.
Right?
Seam?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the seam, but it's
it's like you pull the hammock to where it's at its tightest point, and then everything else is baggy on either side.
So a little bit less than that is what I do typically. And I like to have it high enough off the ground that I can't really sit in it like a chair. I like the bottom of the hammock to be 3.5, 4 feet off the ground, so that I feel like I'm
like right
off
at
the
mid-chest
ground.
kind of thing. Yeah.
And I've done it higher before.
Or head level.
Yeah, So, and
I'm
also,
not sure how I would get into that.
That's it. Yeah. Also, I want it
and
to
that would add to my pack weight as the step stool to get up into the hammock.
well worth it though.
Yeah.
And,
you can roll a stump over.
Exactly. Well, I like to be able to get in and out easily, but have it be higher than sitting in it.
Yeah.
I like to pull myself up in it, and I've done it higher too, where I actually, we have some amazing like live oak trees here in Florida that have huge branches that come off of them, and I've done it from one branch to another where I actually had to climb the tree.
That's awesome.
To get in the hammock, and that was kind of more for novelty than anything else, because it wasn't, you wake up and you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. You don't really feel like climbing a tree by the light of the moonlight. Like I don't have my retractable claws that maybe my ancient blood brothers of the past did. I don't believe in evolution. I'm joking. But anyways, it's a
I thought you were talking about Wolverine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My bone claws, depending on if you're going by the comic or the movie.
Yeah.
Just
he had both at different times.
Did he?
Oh yeah.
separate podcast.
Yeah, I know, sorry. And
we'll talk about Magneto's relationship with Wolverine in a future podcast.
But yeah, anyway, so it was a lot more fun to look at that hammock during the day than it was to get in and out of it after dark.
Yeah.
But it was still neat,
This is the other, I think, barrier for me in a hammock. When I'm really soundly asleep, I often will wake up and not know where I am. And I have found myself camping, trying to roll off my bed to go, get a drink of water or something. And I roll and realize, I'm still on the ground. I'm in a tent. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to do that in a hammock,
Yeah.
especially 30 feet up in the air,
Yeah.
this once again could be the end of Matthew.
That could be.
Yeah.
It's worth a try.
If you're a heavy sleeper and wake up disoriented, it might not be the best.
You're choosing
chosen
shelter,
camping.
You might not want to camp if you're like that.
Exactly.
Waking up in the middle of the woods, not knowing where you are.
Well, it doesn't last long, but long enough to fall.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Well, I'm actually closed inside my hammock because of the bug net.
Yeah.
And the
Would that bug net keep you from rolling out?
Yeah.
It would, yeah.
It zips up.
Yeah, it would. I don't think it would hold your full weight if you wanted to
But it would
lay on
maybe
it.
get
Oh,
you
but it'll
enough to-
stop you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll definitely stop you. But it's bug net, so it's not going to hold 150 pounds. You know,
If you
So I'm good.
You'd roll over just enough to have that falling dream and wake up,
Right,
and then you're like,
right.
oh, my face is in a net, and freak out even more.
yeah. So
But yeah,
And then I'd have to change my clothes.
yeah, all valid points. I like it. Well,
I'm reaching here at the end. I'm reaching.
no.
I'm reaching.
No, I'm still thoroughly unconvinced. I think just going back to it, I think it really needs to be just based on the situation at hand.
Yep.
I mean, if you know the length of the trip you're taking, if you're like, say if we're talking about a backpacking trip here, if you know the route you're taking, the length of time you're going to be on the trail, and generally speaking, if you're doing a good plan, you should know the types of gaps and places you're going to be. You can choose a little wiser. Something like the Appalachian Trail, where there's plenty of opportunities for trees. Hammocks would be a great alternative. There's certain sections of the trail where you can't do that, though. Certain parts where they prohibit. You have to be in the shelters, which we're gonna do an episode about that too. Because I'm not crazy about that, the idea of using the shelters with a bunch of people in a busy season. But it'll be an interesting conversational show for that. But anyway, based on the versatility of being able to plop that tent down anywhere, I mean, I think that, depending on where you go, I haven't had a lot of opportunities to go out west and experience camping outdoors where there's not trees everywhere. I mean, pretty much all of the experience I've had has been pretty close to under some kind of shade. So that'll be interesting. My perspective may change as I venture out into the Wild West, but anyway.
If it's nice too, I have no problem with just sleeping on the ground next to the fire.
Yeah, I've done that.
That is, I mean, I've had a
enjoy
couple
that.
nights here in Florida where, it didn't rain and it was a clear night, but where you just throw the tarp down, put your bag on top of the tarp, and then wrap the tarp back on top of you, and you got your little camp burrito set up there. And, I mean, it's...
Trademark. There you go. There's
Camp burrito.
Camp
trademark,
burrito.
yeah. But,
Mark down the day
burrito
of time.
technology. Camp burrito technology.
There you go.
And that's it. And and when you're right there next to the fire, as cold as it gets in Florida, on like a cold night, you can wake up and have ice on your tarp, and you still slept comfortably. That's a lot of fun, just sleeping literally under the stars.
Campolte.
What?
Campolte.
Campolte.
There you go. Like
There you
Chipotle.
go. With burrito
Trademark
technology.
that.
With burrito technology.
Campolte with Chipotle with burrito technology.
Yeah. It's not a good product name if no one can pronounce it.
No.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I definitely appreciate you guys taking the time to come out and have some lively discussion today. This was really good. Looking forward to continuing down this path and learning from the folks that I bring on the show. And I always want to try to encourage people to get outside. Hopefully, some of the discussion we talked about today got you, inspired to go try something that you haven't done before, or try to be as cool as Cale and sleep next to the fire with nothing around you.
Tent or hammock,
Yeah.
or just on the ground.
Yeah.
Any night you can spend in the woods, cook over a fire, hang out with your friends,
That's a good night.
whatever method. I
Yeah.
mean, if you have to sleep in the back seat of your car, it's worth it
Oh yeah.
to get out in the woods and do some camping. so.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree with that more. And don't let me discourage any college kids from getting hammocks and hanging out. If that's how you got to get outside, absolutely go
It's
do
a
it.
very hipster thing to do.
It's very hipster, but do your thing. So thanks again, guys, for coming out. If you haven't yet, I know I got to do this pitch every single time I do the show. Go check out the social media pages for Trail Connection. Are you guys followers
Absolutely.
on Instagram?
Yep.
Yes, you are. And check out the videos on YouTube. If you're listening to audio, we've got a full video for every episode as well. And give us a follow and subscribe there as well. We got some cool stuff coming up. We're going to be doing some mini episodes in the weeks to come. covering some more detail on some smaller topics, and looking forward to doing that too. Those will be in studio, so I got a pretty neat little setup there. I'm excited to unveil. So
Cool.
Appreciate it, guys. Until next time, this is the Trail Connection. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Do me a favor and subscribe right down here. And if you want to check out some more Trail Connection videos, you can see them up over here or down over here. Thanks again, guys.